I'm never going to go. All right, we're live now. Shalom. Yahweh Hashem Yahshua Barakatah. Yahweh Shemar Atam Hashem Yahshua. This is the Isupk that started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969 under Commanding General Yohanan. And we're here to teach the truth of the Bible. The so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American Indians are the real Israelites according to the scriptures. Today is the Lashon Kodash, or Holy Tongue, Isupk Friday Ancient Hebrew class. And in this class, what we like to do is we like to go into the actual ancient Hebrew. This is the oldest language on the planet, y'all. This language goes back thousands of years, even before the time of Egypt. It goes all the way to the time of Shem, and shortly after Noah, and possibly even before that. We know for sure that this was what language the Hebrews spoke in the Bible. This is actually the language that Christ used to speak. You understand, or still speaks, because he's out there somewhere. Let me make sure we got this live going. It's like, y'all, give me 1 second. There we go. Bro, give me 1 second. I just gotta send this class out. Make sure to like the class, share it. We want to try to push this truth across all 4 corners of the earth. Now, I went ahead and erased the prayer verses that we had from the last class. All right. But we're going to go back into that series probably in a couple of weeks to finish that off. Today, what I want to focus on is the alphabet. This is the alphabet of the Lashon Kodash. You'll see I have it written on this side of the screen, but since we're focusing on it today, I wanted to also get it on the screen like how it would be read from right to left. The first thing you need to know about Hebrew is that it is not written from left to right. It is written from right to left. This is going to be a foundational class in a series of foundational classes where we go over the basics for the characters in the alphabet of the Hebrew. And I always like to start with the ancient Hebrew because it has less variance of some of the characters. The Assyrian Hebrew is the Hebrew that we use during the Sabbath service because we typically go off of the Bible Hub app, which has the Assyrian or AKA modern Hebrew on it. So these characters are what you're going to see on the apps that we use during Sabbath service. But this is the Hebrew that you typically see on brothers' garments. It's what you're going to see in the classrooms, on the podium, on the altars, on different artifacts, and possibly even old Native American burial grounds found throughout North, Central, and South America. This is the oldest language that they used to speak because they are, in fact, Israelites. You understand? Now, I want you to take the time to really look at these characters and consider the fact that they actually all mean something visually, okay? I like to use this phrase because it is more easily understood in the modern day and times that these characters are technically like what we call today memes or characters, hieroglyphs, where the actual characters themselves actually represent something. So say, for instance, the world ends, right? Say, for instance, World War III starts and then bombs get dropped. People get taken up in chariots and brought to a whole different part of the world. Well, there may be other Israelites. There may be people that spoke different languages in whatever part of the world they had come from. Well, to unite us all under one language is going to be very important for us to have our original language, our Hebrew language, the purest language that we know of right now, and can possibly even be improved upon once Christ comes back to reign. But we are getting a head start by going in and understanding what was once before, what was our culture surrounded and focused on. And so when you understand these characters here, then you can understand what it takes to build a civilization, because all of these characters are the building blocks of symbols that are used to make sure that everybody has one understanding of what is what in a society, okay? So keep in mind, again, the Lashon Kodash means holy tongue. And to write it on the board, it actually looks like this. Lashon Kodash. Lashon Kodash. Now, I'm going to explain what these little marks under the characters mean. shortly. But before we get to that, we need to first understand how to pronounce these characters. Now, some of these characters, believe it or not, are going to look pretty similar to what they sound like in the modern day and age, meaning they've withstood the test of time and they actually sound exactly like it looks. So I'm going to give you an example. Our first character, again, reading from right to left, first character is ah. And if you were to actually write how it is in English and how to pronounce it, it sounds like A-H. It almost looks like a capital A that's been turned over. We're going to go ahead and explain what each of these characters mean after we go through the full alphabet. So I want to first get an understanding of how it sounds. Then we're going to come back and we're going to break down each character to give you an understanding of what it's talking about and what it means. The next character, ba. Ba, B-A, ba. All right, this is ba. Next character, ga, ga, like what we would consider a G. That is ga right there. Almost looks like a 7, but it does mean something. It's actually something that means something very similar to A, okay, but we're gonna break that down here shortly. Now, what you want to do is once we get everything filled out on the board for today's class, you'll want to like this video, save it to your favorites, create a playlist. If you have a YouTube channel, if you're on Facebook, definitely like and share the class so that it's on your posts, on your Facebook wall. But I highly recommend that if you're watching on YouTube to not only like the video, but go ahead and add it to its own list of like in a playlist. A bookmark playlist. That way you can put them in the order, because as we go through this foundation series of the Hebrew, you're going to have some of those basics lined right up for if you ever have to review the subject matter. All right, now we have da. Da. All right, da is very important. Da. So we got a, ba, ga, and da. Okay, a, ba, ga, and da. And just to kind of give you an idea on how some of the Hebrew is written, here is my name. Ya, Kwa, Tazayan. This is my Hebrew name. Kwa Tazayan Ayalawan, which means officer, mighty tree in English. Officer, mighty tree. And the interesting thing about Hebrew is that it explains names and explains certain things by its visuals, which maybe perhaps in another class we can get into that. But this is my name in the Lashon Kodash. All right. And there are many other names all throughout the Bible that can be deciphered and rewritten in the Lashon Kodash. Another thing that we have to keep in mind, Hebrew has no vowels. Modern Hebrew may have vowels, but these characters here, even the ones that kind of sort of look like they would be vowels, like ah, we think of A, E, I, O, and U as vowels in the English language, but ah in the ancient Hebrew is not even a vowel. When we think of vowels, vowels are characters that are used as filler words, filler characters. Nothing in Hebrew actually is supposed to have filler anything. And the reason why we know that is because Black, Hispanic, and Native American Indians always tend to shorten every language that we speak anyways, whether it be English, whether it be Spanish, you know what I'm saying? We're always trying to shorten the language. That's why we come up with our own dialects with whatever regions of America, North, Central, and South America that we live at, and are always trying to speak a lot of words without saying as much. Hebrew is actually going to be the easiest language that you've ever learned because it is designed to keep it simple. You understand? It is designed to be a simple language. Abba, ga, da, ha, wa. Wa. Interesting, right? Because we think of the letter Y and how that's pronounced is with what we would consider a W when we say the character Y. But In the Lashon Kodash, what looks like a Y is Wa, which makes it easy to remember. Ba, when you write the letter B, a B looks like this, but if you just turn it around, it looks just like pretty much like how it's written right here, right? So you can actually see that this is a language that is derivative of all other languages. You could look at Japanese and see symbols of Japanese characters that are similar. You can see English characters like ka and la and za as examples that have withstood the test of time and over the past thousands of years have still had a similar look and sound to what it looks like. But the only difference is we never understood what those characters actually meant. But that's why the Isupk and the Commanding General Yohana is here to reveal the secrets of not only the Bible, but the language that was spoken by the people in the Bible, because the Isupk is the home of the truth. Abagadahawa, you guessed it, za. Za, like pizza. Zabalawan, or Zabalawan, which is a tribe of Israel, right? Za. Now, this one right here, it's another one that looks kind of Asiatic, but it's not. It's actually Hebraic. Ka. If I were to write that, ka. Ka. Ka, almost like you're saying cha, like when you say the word chance, chancellor. You don't say cha, it's actually pronounced ka, almost like a K and an H, and then a couple A's. Again, these are all consonants. Perfect example. The Hebrew name that I told you, which is my name, no vowels in that name. When you look at God's name, God's name in the Bible is YHWH. If you want to know what God's name is in the Hebrew, it's YHWH, which in English is pronounced Yah-Ha-Wah. Yah-Ha-Wah. Now, I'll explain. Since we're on the subject, you'll notice that I write a little frowny face on the characters that are pronounced by themselves, and a little smiley line that connects two characters together. One rule of thumb is for the root words and root names of most names in the Bible, without any modifiers like prepositions, possessive adjectives, they usually have the last two characters joined together. There are exceptions to that rule. But in this case, and in most cases, you can be assured that for the most part, they'll be the last two joined together, which means Yah, Ha, Wa, and Ha becomes Yahweh. 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 This is how the Native Americans used to say God's name. This is how the ancient Israelites used to say God's name. This is the language that you find in the ancient tombs that go back as far as 700 to 800 BC. You understand? The Olmecs, the Aztecs, the Mayans, their derivative tribal languages before they even had what they had. The most pure form of them that goes as far back as right when they migrated over to this side of the globe, you're going to see this language that was written in this side of the globe far beyond any European influence on this side of the globe. So let there be no surprise there. This language is a Native American language. It is a Hebrew language because they are one and the same. Abagada hawaza cha ta and Yah. Yah. Just like how we said Yahweh. Yah. Okay? Yah. Abagada hawaza chata Yah. Let's get more of these. We got Ka. Ka is interesting because it looks like the letter K. It's just turned backwards. So again, Hebrew read from right to left. That actually makes a lot of sense. For that Ka to be flipped around damn near, and then of course there's that that hemicircle that goes over. K actually looks like it's, at least the capital K is look like it's withheld the test of time pretty well. The one that's definitely impressive and has withstood time is the character La. La. Abagada hawaza khataya kala. Now we have the two squiggly ones, two squigglies. We got ma and na. Well, guess what? We actually are already familiar with that. Ma and na. And what's the difference between ma and na? Just like how in English, there's an extra squiggly on the M versus the lesser squigglies on the N. Ma and na. Again, they all mean something. So it's going to be interesting to see what it means. Okay? What it means. Abagada hawaza khataya kalamana. Now we have another one here. Sa. 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 Now, how do we recognize this one? I'll tell you how. We're all used to that character S. You might even sometimes see it with the $ symbol on it. And that's not really, the interesting thing was that, well, we use the sha for that, but the term for money in Hebrew is shakoyim, which sounds like it has a similar beginning. But when you write the letter S, and if you draw a line through it, all you're really doing is just cutting off these connections right here, and you pretty much have sa in its normal original form. Okay, so it makes it easier to remember. Some of these characters are not going to require you too much repetition to remember. But what I usually tell folks to do is when you're first getting the Hebrew alphabet and you're learning it for the first time, it's very important that you practice. I used to take notebooks and I used to just practice the Hebrew. I would take a line and I would just say, ah, 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 ah. And I'll go all the way across the notebook paper, right? Then I'll go to the next line, ba, 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 ba. And I would say it every time that I read it. Why is that? Because if you say it every time that you write it, you'll be able to remember how to say it every time that you see it. If you do this enough times, you'll remember the language very quickly. And that also has to be reduplicated with the Assyrian Hebrew. But again, that's not what we're focused on today. Today, we're mainly focused on the ancient Hebrew and the original meaning of these characters. When you go into the modern Hebrew, it doesn't necessarily look like what it means when you compare it to the Lashon Kodash, which is why the Lashon Kodash is it's a better tool to teach language because it has meaning behind each character. Now, this is not the letter O. We think of O as a vowel, and again, Hebrew has no vowels. It's all consonants. I. That's how you pronounce this character right here. So we have all the way down here. Now we got another one. Pa. Pa. Almost like a pot, right? Or a cup of sorts. But pa looks just like that, where you come in, boom, like that. Now we have tazah. Tazah. Finishing up here, we have qua. Believe it or not, that already does look like a Q. It's just stood up a little bit more, and it has a half. You may actually see it sometimes like this, but for the most part, you'll probably see it more so with that semi half circle, and then the line pointing down that goes through the whole thing, rather than when you think of a capital Q, it kind of just sticks out the corner on the edge and doesn't go across the entire character. So don't think of it like Q as we think of it today. Think of it more like Q, like qua, almost like an umbrella. But again, we're gonna get you the understanding of what these characters mean, because you could literally draw certain things using these characters, and they have a deeper meaning behind them. Now we have Ra. Ra. And Ra technically looks pretty similar to the letter R. Okay, it's just missing that part that comes out right here. But when you look at the lowercase r, it kind of sort of has kept some of that flavor there, right? That kind of looks like a P now. That's not what it is. Two more. Finishing up the alphabet, we have Sha and we have Tha. All right. So going through the alphabet, we have Abagadahawaza Kataya Kalamanasa Ipa Tazakwa Rasha Tha. You understand? That's the Hebrew alphabet. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 characters. 22 characters. Less characters than English and pretty much every other language out there. So there's less to worry about. And again, no vowels, only consonants. So it's almost like Ebonics because it just shortens words and it keeps things simple. It's not supposed to be complicated. Hebrew is supposed to be a language that gets the point across and can be shouted very loud without a lot of fancy tongue play like some fancy languages of today. There's not a whole lot of that in Hebrew. Hebrew, maybe the fanciest you'll get is cha, which sounds kind of tough anyways, right? Or tazah, or I. But those characters, again, are all phrases that can pretty much be pronounced almost like as if you had to shout them from a mountain. It's a lot easier to do than some other languages that are, I guess you could say, more modernized. Okay, so again, Hebrew is just meant to be a loud language. And a lot of times you'll see brothers when they're writing with English, wording on Facebook or social media, when they write something like the salute, which we're going to talk about today, they're going to say things like Yahweh Hashem Yahushai Brakatah, which is our salute, right? We're going to talk about that later. And then you'll just see them type it in all caps. A lot of times we do that because that's meant to recognize that it is said very loud, right? When somebody writes in all caps, usually when you're reading it, you imagine that they're yelling and not just speaking regularly. Hebrew, just think of Hebrew as a language that's all caps with the caps lock on the whole time. That's one way that you can think about Hebrew. Now, let's start looking at these characters. Let's start looking at the characters. Once we get through that, then we're going to go over the greeting. And of course, you know what? I feel like we should start with that. Only because when you're a student in the class and you tune into our classes online, it's important to say the greeting at the beginning of the class so that we can mark your attendance and keep record on how many students are in the class, who attended on what days. Because in our school, as you continue to attend classes, it'll get to the point where we recognize that some people are regulars and have put in a lot of time and effort in learning and can get to the point where they earn a Hebrew name for themselves, a kind of like a first step into really taking back hold of their culture. In Isupk, we have what's called a 90-day program. And in that program, when you tune into classes long enough, typically about 90 days or so, right? You start gaining a lot of information really quickly, especially if you're taking notes, especially if you're asking questions. And so some of the foundational pieces for coming into the school is to actually type in the chat the salute. And you would write it in, you would type it in English because we don't expect you to use Hebrew characters in there, but it would be written like this: Yahweh, which is again the Most High's name, Bahasham, Yahushai, Barak Atah. Yahaba Shemir Shai Brakatah. And then what you would do is you would type this in the chat, but you would also put your name, your city, let me see, yeah, and state. You say Yahweh Shem Shah Brakatah, then you would put your name, say this is so and so from San Antonio, Texas, right? If you're a sister, it's a slightly different salute, okay? So for men, salute. And again, this is how you would check into a class. So what you want to do is you want to type this basically exactly like how it's written. I highly recommend using all caps to just get used to it anyways. Type this exactly as it's written here. Type your name, the city that you reside in, and the state that you reside in. And then for sisters, it's like this: Yahweh, Shema, but Hashem Yahushai. Let's see. And again, name, city, and state. What does it mean when we say Yahweh Shem Yahushai Brakatah or Yahweh Shem Yahushai? So this is what it says: God, or Most High God, in the name Yahushai, which is Christ or Jesus, Christ the Savior, basically. Barak Atah means bless you. You understand? Now in the name of Christ, bless you. Oh, let me reset the picture. Sometimes when I go across the screen, it'll fog up a little bit. Let me see. Go ahead, sir.
Do you want to use the light here? The dynamo light?
You know what? I just noticed that it was on 1440p. I just bumped up the resolution of the stream, so if you're able to, how about now? Does it look a little brighter? Y'all already got a light? Because that thing, that's bright. I like this light. Remember, it was there and it was gone. Now it's there again.
It's very bright.
No, this is perfect,
but
sis.
I thought you didn't turn it on because maybe I was like.
I forgot all about it. Yeah. How's that look? There might be a little glare, but it's not on the characters, so we got better visuals here. Again, when you tune into a class, this is what you want to write. Women, you're gonna write what's on the bottom. Men, you're gonna write what's on the top. For the women, hold on, let me do this real quick. So this says God watch over you in the name Christ. And then name, city, and state. That's how you check into our classes. If you do that, it's then seen all over that you're checking in. Okay, so you just check in, and of course, you know that's normal. especially on Facebook. Well, more so on YouTube than Facebook, because on Facebook, we usually see your name in the chat when you check in. But on YouTube, especially, you want to use your name, use your full name, or you don't have to, at least your first name. Because again, on YouTube, you may have a different name than what your actual name is for your YouTube ID. So just keep that in mind. Now, go ahead and post in the chat. Rudy, how's it look now? Is it better? I know you're on the highway, so sometimes the signal could be a little bit weak out there, but that's all right. Let's go over these. So again, Yahweh Hashem Yahshua Barakatah, name, city, and state. Or for sisters, Yahweh Shemar Atam Bahashem Yahushai, and in the name, city, and state. First character, Ah. Okay, let's see what he said. Oh, Most High Christ. Most High Christ. Hey, the water for that. The water for that, priest. I'm getting text messages and stuff. I got you. Yeah, like I said, if you're tuning in on YouTube, it should let you change the resolution of the stream. I'm not sure if Facebook lets you do that. Does Facebook let you change the resolution of the stream? So means cattle. Think of a bull, a cow, right? Especially a bull, because a bull has horns. This is a cattle. Technically, if you were to look at it from above, it would look just like that. So the represents cattle or food or substance, things like that. Cattle can, of course, be more than just food. It can be used for other things too. And so there are other characters in the language that can be a little bit more specific. And so we're going to go over these first three characters are vital for any civilization. Okay, Ba looks like this, and it means house or home. Now think of your most primitive house that you can just make real quick. If you ever go camping, if you ever were roughing it in the wilderness, in the forest some damn where, you would build a teepee. And then your house would be the immediate camping ground right in front of it. That would be where you put your fire, keep warm, or where you have some things, right? It would be basically like your yard. And the modern day version of that is what they call plots. Okay, and you look at a neighborhood is made of plots. And in that neighborhood, you basically have your basic setup of the house. Think of it like a teepee, if we were thinking in ancient times, and then your front yard, right? And so Ba represents house. We got food, we got house, and then we got Ga, which means camel. Gamal is actually the full name for camel, but Ga itself represents a camel, okay? So it represents a specific type of animal, okay? Whereas means cattle, Ga means camel, okay? Now, why is that important? What's so important about a camel? Well, if you've ever been in 115-degree weather, you don't want to be using all of your energy running and walking and, moving around, especially in the Middle East where there's a lot of dunes, a lot of sand, a lot of open space. And so transportation is very important. Camel represents literally a camel, right? Which can provide certain things, right? But the camel and its most normal purpose is a means of transportation. So the first three characters of the Hebrew language, Ba, and Ga, are literally food, shelter, and transportation. Food, shelter, and transportation. What do you spend most of your money on? If you have loans and rent and things like that, it's food, shelter, and transportation. Is that not right? Some people will have a car paid off. If you do, Most High Christ, good for you for getting that out the way. That's a whole chunk there you ain't got to worry about. But cars usually have a car enough to range everything anywhere between $120 a month, upwards of $1,000 a month if you're just going full out with a vehicle loan, right? Try to get you for 70 months or whatever, and you're just in a whole lot of what do you call it? What's it called? Finance slump, having to deal with that. Houses are generally the exact same, but even longer term, going upwards of 20, 30 years, right? Usually 30 years, right? And so when you think about that, most people don't even own their homes. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because these are some of the base necessities of really getting out and doing your own thing, right? You leave your folks' house, you got to go somewhere else. You got to have a house, or, in most cases. You gotta have a house, you need to have food, and you need to have a means of travel to basically act as a time machine. That's what cars are nowadays. That's what camels were back then. It's to allow you to not have to use your energy, let something else use its energy to get you where you need to be at so that you can get off and do what you got to do. If you had to go all the way across town, if you were to walk all the way across town, that would take you all day. But if you have a vehicle, you can get there in 15, 20 minutes, right? And so think of transportation as a means of saving time and things like that. So these three things right here, pinnacle for a civilization to be made. Da means door. Da means door. I'm going to show you a little something because we use what is considered the shield of David, okay? It is his name. This is a cool little fun fact for those that are just now learning. And you can check anybody that's not in the school that tries to say that it's a Star of Ring Fam or any kind of goofy mess that doesn't make no sense historically. The Dawah is not a star. Stars, according to the Bible, are circular. Balls of gas in space is what a star is, right? But an actual star, or what this represents is a shield. Think about that for a second, because Dawah is how you say David's name in the ancient Hebrew. But only if you knew these characters can you understand why it looks like that. Because Da, Wa, where's Wa? Right here, Wa, and Da. So his name is Da. Well, it's actually left to right, or right to left. So Da, Wa, and Da. And so the character Wa means fasten or to join. Okay, we're going to go over that here in a second. But I'll just mention this real quick. King David's name is two doors put together. Two doors put together, very creative, right? Very simple. There's a way to write basically his initials. That's what the shield of David represents. It's a signet that is what the king would stamp on a clay using his ring or any kind of stamp that has his family crest on it, and it would represent two doors put together, and it makes what we call a signet or a shield, okay? And so doors are important because a door to a house is what protects the house from intruders, you understand? Whereas, say maybe a more primitive camping ground may have a teepee. The teepee usually has some kind of an entrance, right? So that you're in and out. But then as civilizations begin to grow and people start to use different materials for their houses, they would use doors as a way of letting and filtering things in and out of the house to give access to the house. And that's what a door is. A door is a shield to the home, is it not? So Dawah is a shield that's just two doors put together. That's how you literally say King David's name, and that's what it looks like. Ha. Ha. Now this one's a little bit tough to explain, but it does mean something here. Ha. Let's see. We got that. We got that. And we got ha. Ha means to reveal. Ha means reveal. And the best way that I can think about it is when you play peekaboo with the kid, usually you do this shit right here when you go like that. You know what I mean? And so it's almost like you're doing that with your hand right here and you're revealing something. So think of a reveal as like a veil being moved out the way that that blocks the view of something, but then reveals it, and that's more or less what you're seeing because the character Ha is porous in a sense, so you can actually see through it. But it's almost like as if it's not a complete structure like Ka would be. Okay, reveal. That's what it means, and this is important because God's name has two revealings in it. Okay, just keep that in mind for later. Everything has a meaning visually in Hebrew, at least the pure Hebrew. So, cattle, house, camel, door, and to reveal. Wa means hook or fasten. For those brothers that are in the northern tribes, like Isupk, the so-called Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, they know all about hooks and fasteners. When you go to your Home Depot, when you go to Lowe's, you see a lot of hooks and fasteners. And this kind of looks like a stake that you would put on the corners of a tent to keep it pinned down to the ground, to join the tent to the ground. In modern days, we use things like nails and screws. And this is a hook, which has a similar purpose. In fact, it's used in King David's name as a way to join this door to this door. And so this actually is considered like a fastener to put the two das together to come up with da. So visually speaking, Wa is still technically a part of the symbol right here because it means to join. So it's literally joining his first and last character das together. Za, interesting word right here, or interesting use of this one is weapon. Za means weapon. If I can think of anything, think of like a scythe that would be used in not like a Grim Reaper, but if somebody that's very skilled with a weapon as they're slashing through the air, like you could think of like the symbol of Zorro when Zorro come in with the knife and he would just with the pointed sword and just slash somebody's shirt. You usually put a Z on it, right? But also just the motion of it, which is sharp. Z actually makes a lot of sense for that. Or also a staff with two blades on it that can be used to twirl and can be used to not only protect its user, but to be an offensive weapon. Za, again, means weapon. Okay? I'll get rid of that on the screen. Ka means wall. Wall. And this is an easy one to understand because it kind of looks like it looks like a ladder, but more importantly, it looks like a fence. If you look at the fence outside your house, that fence has pillars that are stood up, and then there's usually cross beams that go across. There's at least two of them. One's towards the top and one towards the bottom. So Ka means wall, and it looks like your fence that's in your backyard, at least in your backyard if you have one. But it can also represent tall buildings made of brick and mortar and things like that. We think of castles. Castles have that same look to it, of verticality with some kind of layers in between to build up that wall. You understand? Trump trying to build a wall from here to Mexico, from Mexico to keep Hispanics from going over. But we'll just use a ladder to climb over that wall. I mean, they try all these different things, but you can't really outbuild or outclass what Hispanic people can do, and what we do in times of need is we do whatever it takes to get through something. Now, Ta is interesting because it looks like a target, right? That's how I like to remember how to say it. Ta looks like a target, but what does it actually mean? It actually means clay. Clay, and that can mean anything from pottery to plates to actual clay that has a what do you call it? It's like a mixture between liquid and solid state that's used for stamps and things like that, right? Think about clay like that. Some people use clay to test Julian dates on heavy machinery equipment. They'll use clay again to have a stamp or a letter of approval. They'll put that clay to seal the letter together, and then there'll be some kind of stamp on it. So clay actually does visually look like that. But like I said, it can take different forms, and that's generally what you see them use for today's time is basically things like plates, pottery, cups, stuff like that. Clay is of course a utilization, a tool for building blocks of something. And what do you use to do those things? You use ya, which is an arm. An arm. Ya represents the arm, or Salakia. It represents a hand. I don't know if I'm saying arm, but may actually represent hand. Yeah, it is hand. You think about what your hand is. Your hand has, like, if you were to hold your arm out like this, think about like if you draw a typical stick figure, right? You draw a stick figure, you know what I'm saying? And he has his arms out and he's got his hands, right, with his fingers. That's kind of like what it's drawing that, so to speak. So it's literally like a really primitive version of drawing a hand or arm. And so in the Lashon Kodash, it kind of considers the arm as part of it because it'll go even more specific when we get to the phrase ka. Ka means palm. And when you look at ka, it pretty much is your hand, or at least the main fingers, right? So ka actually represents the palm of your hand, and while ya represents the entire structure of your your hand and your arm together. So it goes a little bit more specific than the palm, but the hand has that. Now that we have at least this far of our understanding, we can start to understand what the Most High's name means, because the hand of revealing is joined into a revealing. The hand of creation, the Most High is the one that, well, his name literally means he is, or he is the creator. And so the hidden thing that does the work behind the scenes that is hidden is then creating everything and revealing everything that exists. You see what I'm saying? So the Most High's name, which is consisted of a hand/arm, a revealing of hidden things. And then and a lot of times in Hebrew, when there's something that's repeated more than once, it is emphasized in a higher magnitude. And again, revealing is like creation. What does that all mean? The creator who exists in a hidden space in a heaven that we do not understand. So the Most High's name is very powerful in the sense that since he's doing all this from where he's at, we don't see it, but he sees it. You understand? He can comprehend the hidden things. He can reveal and create things from nothing. That goes beyond our understanding. His name is it's almost like an unfair advantage, but hey, he's the one that has the right to have that, since he is the creator. La, character La means staff. Staff. When you think of leadership, you think of the character El, but a staff is typically held by a leader. Okay, La means staff. Pillar. A pillar is a modern day form of a staff that holds up a house. A staff is used to hold up a flag or a banner. You know what I'm saying? A staff is also used. Well, think about you think of typical movies and things like that, like an image of Moses. Of course, you got to think of him being black, not white. Him holding a staff, and he splitting the Red Sea with the staff. Moses being a leader. Okay. In fact, when you think of the word staff, when it's used for a faculty of an organization like a school or a college, right, usually are consisted of what they call a staff, right, a faculty. And that is the leadership of the school, the leadership of that organization, okay? Businesses have it, schools have it, you understand? So this is a concept of a civilization that goes all the way back to the ancient times, where law represents the leadership, which, the word leadership may actually have a different name, but it represents a staff. It represents that pillar of construction, or the pillar that holds something up, holds an organization together. Ma means water. Now, if you look at it, think of a body of water, right? If you were to look at it, like if you were sitting to the side of like a lake or the ocean, and you were looking at the edge of it, you could actually see the depths of the water. And then on the surface, you would see the waves or the ripples of the water going across the top. Ma means water. Ma means water. This is very important because if we're ever caught in the wilderness together, we would want to try to mark a tree that leads people to a spring somewhere. And so as they get closer to it, they may start seeing this symbol going all the way up to where the water is at. So maybe perhaps you'll put it on the side of a tree that if you were to look at it from one side, you'll say, okay, it's that direction because I'm seeing it on this side of the tree. So if I continue this way, it may lead me to water. Ma is a very important word right there. Ma. And one thing that goes hand in hand with water is na, which represents seed. Na means seed. Now, water is important, of course, for the liquid parts of the earth. Na, when you look at it, if you were basically sitting on the ground, but can see under the ground, you have under the ground here, and then you have the seed, which sits close to the surface of the ground. And so na and the seed is basically one thing that it means right there. And it visually represents, like when you look at it, it's actually telling you that this is an area that has seeds under the ground. And so you're looking at it from the horizontal, where you can see under the ground, you can see the seed there in the ground. So we've gone over quite a bit already. Let's recap what we have so far before we continue. Abagadahawaza means cattle, house, camel, door, reveal, hook, and weapon. Khataya, you got your wall. You have clay, which is used for pottery and all types of things. And you have a hand/arm. Kalamana, so ka means palm of the hand. La means staff. Ma means water. And na represents seed. What do we have next? Sa. Sa. This is interesting too, because much like how the character ka means the wall itself, sa means support. Support. Sa means support. When you look at that character, you see these horizontal lines being held up by a vertical line, much like how a fence is held together, right? Because while a wall is built by a series of supports, the wall does have these materials that go across it that actually build up the surface of the wall itself. The support beams are what keep it all strong, because of course the support beams go further than the ground surface. It goes into the ground. So when you're thinking of building a fence, you think of support, then you think of cross beams that build the wall. You understand? And so it's easy to remember it. It's easy to remember. Maybe you just take some practice to understand how to pronounce the characters, but visually looking at them, they actually are, for the most part, staying right along with what they look like. Okay? It's just a matter of getting the understanding of what it's telling you and then implementing that if we all get to the point where we're out in the middle of nowhere and we can't speak to each other in our own languages that we were forced to grow up speaking, we can always revert back to our original language and it'll serve multiple purposes. This right here, I, which is literally just pronounced like the character I by itself, it represents the I. And this ain't no Egyptology type mess, all right? Don't think of it like that. But that is what you typical, right? You have your eye. That's eye right there. It's a circle, which represents your actual retina. You understand? So again, not too complicated. Not too complicated. Hebrew is not supposed to be complicated. It's supposed to be a tool used to bring our nation together. Pa. This is a funny one right here. Pa means mouth. And the best way that you can remember it is think about Pac-Man. Right? You think of Pac-Man, you ever seen that old Pac-Man game? That almost looks like it right here because you have the opening right here of the mouth. Pa means mouth. Pac-Man is just a way to remember that it starts with a P. I'm pronouncing it. Pa. You understand? You got Pac-Man there going after little ghosts or whatever. All right? Tazah. What do you think Tazah means? Tazah. Tazah means side. Tazah means side. And so a lot of times you'll see that Tazah and La are words that are used in names for people that are ambassadors or for right-hand men. This literally means side, almost like in the sense that when you think of the character that it uses in the middle of it, think of it like this, just to kind of make it a little bit easier for you. Za means weapon, and La means staff. So what is Tazah then, if not somebody that's almost like an armor bearer that is in a position of leadership that can be used for multiple purposes, even as far as defending? Think about that in that sense. You would consider in the ancient days, some of the high-ranked officers and priests, they would have a structure that would involve people that would sit on their side to either provide weapons for the primary warrior or the general or the person that was in complete leadership. They would be right next to them. They would also be somebody that can eventually have that position because they, again, are considered leadership because they work with leaders, okay? Tazah means side in that sense, but it can also be used for other purposes too. That's just what it means right there. Qua, finishing up here. Qua actually means circle. So to not get it confused with an actual circle, qua means circle. We think of qua as a circle because of the letter Q, right? Understand? It's just that it has this form right here. So that's one of the reasons why some ancient Hebrew may have it look a little bit more like a circle, okay? A little bit more like that. When you think of a stick figure, you kind of think of that too. But that goes without saying, that's what that means. Ra. This is another resource-focused character, which means head. So again, when you're drawing your stick figures, if you're using the Hebrew language to get an understanding of pretty much any of these things, you may have your arm here, you know what I'm saying? You may have your ka, you have your palm right here, right? Then you have the head. Head. Ra. You have ka right here. You have ya right here. Boom. You understand? So it's primitive, but you get the idea, okay? Head. And that actually is used for a lot of things too. That can also mean leadership. There are certain names, like for instance, Kapiar, which uses ka, pa, ya, and ra, which are all physical traits that would compose of a Kapiar, which would be a lion that is coming into its true nature, its true form, using its mouth to roar, using its palms and its arms to fight, right? Lionesses, they use it for hunting. That's the thing, difference between cat and dogs. Cats have more ability with their arms and hands. So to say Kapayar is this is a really good example of how Hebrew is practically used in its visual form. So ka, pa, ya, and ra means young lion. And what is a lion if not a entity or animal that has strong hands, a strong mouth, strong, utilizable arms, and of course the mane, which is the head, which is where its jaws are at and everything like that. So Kapayar means young lion, and visually it's describing the traits of a lion. You understand? That's cool. No matter how you look at it. And to be honest, Shah is something that you will recognize. Shah means tooth. And when you look at the character Shah, what does it look like? It looks like if you were to draw like an animal and you just kind of draw whatever, right? We'll just go with Pac-Man just as an example. You think of, well, you got to have teeth to bite, right? When you think of a dinosaur, you think of a shark, you think of other, animals in the ocean. I'm terrible at drawing, okay? Right, you think of a shark. Sharks are known for their bite, their teeth. Shah means tooth. Shah means tooth, right? Just like on a shark. Heck, that might have been what you call them. Maybe shark is actually that was derived from the Hebrew. We don't know, but you would call it a shark because it's known for its teeth. Shark with a ra there. So the teeth in the head are the main factor with a shark. Of course, that's English, but I'm just telling you, again, Hebrew is a derivative language, so there may be some signs of that thing. Speaking of sign, our last character, Tha, means sign or end. Now, when you look at the character Tha, don't think of, please don't do this. Don't think of like, quote unquote, Jesus bearing his cross. All right, that's not, no, don't think of it like that. But Tha is actually a sign, okay? It's a sign. And you think of Tha, you think of T anyways, okay? But it's almost like it's tilted over, and then now you have Tha. Tha, almost like it's falling down or coming to its end. Tha is not to be mixed with Zion, though it does look like the typical base setup of what you would consider to be a sword. But again, it just means sign or end. And this is the major, like this right here gives you a good understanding of the ancient Hebrew. I'm gonna take a photo of this for some of our students that may not have gotten a really good image quality during the class. But again, this is the basics of Hebrew. Of course, if you erase all this right here, the characters are what you want to focus on the most. Understanding how to pronounce them, practicing, writing them down, trying to get a good form for your writing skills for the Hebrew. But they're very simple characters. They're not too complicated. You understand? And so again, they're pronounced Abba Gada Hawaza Kataya Kala Mana Sa Ipa Taza Kwa Ra Sha and Tha. Okay? And so we've gone over the meanings of these characters, what they visually represent. We've even shown you a couple of examples of how it visually represents some of the words that the Hebrew is using, okay? Like the Most High's name, or like in the case of a young lion, or even in the case of the King David's name, right? So we're showing you the practical use of the Lashon Kodash. And what better way to learn that than to learn from the Isupk, which is the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, where we utilize our practical language to then come back to our true heritage. So again, represents cattle, of course, resources, things like that, used for clothes, food, and all sorts of things. Ba represents the house. Ga represents a specific type of cattle that is used for transportation mainly. Da represents door. Oh, and again, on this side of the globe, the horse, right? But on the other side of the globe, the camel. Okay, so just let you know that right there. Ha, which means to reveal. Wa, which represents a hook or a fastener. Za, which means weapon. Zayan means weapon. Ka, which represents a wall. Ta represents clay, mortar, mashable materials. Okay. Ya, matter of fact, what's interesting is targets are made out of clay. You think of like when you say pool, and then they throw a target in the air. It's usually made with a simple material like clay that gives it some weight so that it can fly a distance, but will break apart pretty quick if you shoot it. So ta, think of target, a clay target. That'll help you remember that. Ya represents the hand and the arm combo, something that differentiates humans from a lot of different animals, right? Because we have the ability to use our hands for a lot of things. And some animals have the ability to as well, like cats and monkeys and stuff like that. So palm represents the actual hand itself and the digits of the hand that are used for, very specific manipulation of objects and things like that. La represents the staff, right? Like what Moses used to split the Red Sea. Ma represents water, looks like the actual waves of the water itself. Na means seed, and again, looks like a horizontal view where you could see the dirt under the dirt, and then the surface containing the seed that is planted, right under the surface of the dirt. Then we have Sa, which means support. It looks like part of a support beam of a fence or any kind of structure. I literally looks like an eye. That's pretty self-explanatory. Likewise with Pa, which represents a mouth. Okay. Taza, which represents armor bearer or a side or a leadership piece that includes weaponry, it includes the staff. So think of it as like something that represents a right hand of something, right? Qua represents circle, and again, circles are just something that geometrically is used in architecture and all sorts of things to make sure that there is good measurements for all types of things. You know what I'm saying? Especially considering that we live on a planet that is circular and is spherical, right? Not flat, because we don't believe in flat earth stuff like Kyrie Irving. You understand? This is the home of the truth, not the home of goofiness. Ra represents the head, which literally looks like the head of like a cow or any kind of animal, especially birds, but typically the head of an animal, if you were to draw it as a stick figure, it would look like that. Sha means tooth, right? We drew a shark with the sharp teeth. Most kids, when they first start drawing, they'll draw like a dinosaur or something, and you'll know right away he's trying to draw the teeth because this actual shape has withstood the test of time. It's not a W, it's Sha. So think sharp, think tooth, think of a shark, right? Which uses really sharp teeth. Tha, which means the sign and the end of something. This is the Hebrew alphabet. It's practical. It's useful for the foundations of a civilization. And as we continue to use these characters and going over prayers and things like that, start trying to memorize how they look and practice writing them down. I even would give, now this is an option, but I highly recommend that you take 1 or 2 sheets of paper and you start writing the characters from right to left and just practice each character on a whole line or a whole 2 lines dedicated to each character to practice writing it. And say it every time that you write it. Say the characters as you write them to commit them to memory. So again, in the Isupk, we teach these things, and it's just a matter of time before you'll be able to say this and then even read it in Hebrew and know that that's what's being said, right? That's how I've taught some of the officers in our school to remember the language, which will then translate in the way they pronounce these characters right here on this side. Even though they look pretty much way different than these characters here, it still translates well. So when we get to those characters, we want to have a good foundation on understanding these so that it's easier to remember the other alphabet. This is just the oldest form of this alphabet that is used to represent our culture to the most. Okay. So we'll leave it on that. I'm going to leave this on the board. Take a screenshot if you can of everything that we've written here so that we have it all down on the board. We'll recap it very briefly in the next class before we continue with our foundation series. And we'll go from there to continue to edify Israel to make sure that we come back to our original language, our original heritage, and the law, statutes, and commandments that the Most High gave us. So we'll go ahead and end the class on that. And with that, this is the Isupk that started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. In 1969, we were under Commanding General Yohana. And we're here to teach the truth of the Bible that so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American Indians are the real Israelites according to the scriptures. So with that, shalom. Sorry.